Back again.
The first Android phone was the
I'm back.
G1,
Back again.
as it was called outside of the USA. The reviews were
I'm
mixed,
back.
but many people
Back again.
iOS had a lot of potential. Now for the iPhone and iOS. In 2005, the one and only
Now we gotta go
had
and
a huge job to do.
mess with John,
Make the perfect handheld device.
like we did last episode.
Apple announced this new phone along with its operating system. The first of the systems was called the iPhone OS 1. And unlike Google, Apple didn't go for sweet sounding
I'm
names,
gonna
just
be drunk.
counting up
Drunk
numbers.
again in this video.
Phones, but as you know, both operating systems ran on various mobile devices. The first iPhones were praised as a spectacular device and only added to the mystique of Jobs, who for some was like a techno god. You just have to read those early reviews to find fawning praise about how the iPhone was sleek, fantastic, innovative, a superb device for surfing the web, like nothing else before it. Gizmodo wrote, "I'm thumbing through my own iPhone like a teenager with his first Playboy. It wasn't real."
Let me turn this light off. Okay.
Darn expensive, coming in at a base price of $499. Compare that to the first Android phone, which launched at $179. But the price didn't matter to many, as iPhones were being hailed as the future of mobile devices. That's kind of been the story ever since, but as we've seen in the years since, many high-end Android phones are also now very expensive. They might have cost a lot of cash, but that didn't stop people buying the iPhone. If you look at the best-selling iPhones of all time, you'll see that it's topped by early Nokia phones. And it makes sense. You could throw them against a wall and they wouldn't break, and the battery lasted longer than any human could stay awake. That said, the third phone on the list is the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, and it beats any Android phone a long way. 220 million people bought that phone, which is more than impressive. The best-selling Android phone of all time is the Samsung Galaxy S4, and that sold just 80 million units, a long way behind. It ran Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean, but then just below that you have the iPhone 5 and iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus, which sold 70 and 65.9 million units respectively. The iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S aren't too far behind that, while various versions of the Samsung Galaxy have done okay too. If you look at the historical market share of operating systems, you'll find in 2009 Android was barely getting out of the blocks, and iOS was in front. The operating system called Symbian, used by a bunch of big manufacturers like Nokia, was ahead of them both, but that soon changed. What you see in the years ahead is Microsoft Mobile taking a huge nosedive and Android rocketing to the top. We will say though, that over the years iOS has taken some small dips and rises, but mostly has stayed quite stable. Only lately has the iPhone been in a bit of trouble. That might say something about its dedicated users over the years. But since about 2013, Android has enjoyed an 80% market share, give or take a little now and again. No one can deny that Apple has very devoted fans, but it's impossible to contest that Android is king of the market. However, just because something sells more doesn't mean it's better. As we know, the iPhone is very expensive, which we're sure puts a lot of people off. We went to an article by Fast Company, and along with the staff at the website, some designers and technology big thinkers talked about what phone they thought was the best of all time. The article was released in 2018, and you know what? The list of phones selected was mostly populated by various versions of the iPhone. Some old school phones, such as the early BlackBerry, got a mention, as did the popular Motorola flip phones and old Nokias. We couldn't even find an Android phone on the list. Maybe these guys were just fond of the good old days, or maybe there just hasn't been an almost perfect Android phone yet. What about 2019? We looked to see what people were saying were the best phones you could buy in 2019. Although some lists do include the iPhone XS, it doesn't matter where you look, Samsung Galaxy phones top the lists right now, with various types of Galaxy phones filling out most of the top spots, give or take the old Huawei phone. Some of the top 10 lists right now don't even include the iPhone, which is surprising, given similar lists you would have found published a few years ago.
My favorite way is those trees.
Android phones, whether Huawei, Samsung, Xiaomi, or OnePlus, are favored over the iPhone. While the iPhone was almost always at the top of reviews not that long ago, these days people are talking about the fall of the phone. That seems to have begun in 2018. It looks like these days that sleek design is just too expensive for some people, and they think you can get a better machine for a cheaper price with an Android phone. This still doesn't tell us which is the best operating system though. Again, the experts have chimed in, not just about which phone is best, but what operating system is best? The first thing most people point to is that Android gives the consumer more variety. That's why it sells better. There are just so many phones out there with all kinds of features and at all prices. But it's more than that. The number of apps available for Android is approximately 3.5 million, while for iOS it's 2.5 million. Wait though, because while there are more free Android apps and a greater variety, at least one reviewer says Apple has the better
Hello,
quality apps,
darkness, my
especially if you
old
play games.
friend.
Some people also
I
say that
come
Apple
to
is
talk
better at
to
weeding out
you
questionable apps than
again.
Android, and the App Store is better to navigate than the Play Store. Another big deal is Maps. We looked at a few comparisons of Apple Maps and Google Maps, and not one person said Apple Maps was better. Most reviewers did say that Apple Maps is getting better and isn't far behind, but in the end, you just have to go with Google. What concerns a lot of people too is the battery life of their device. It's a huge thing, as no one likes to see their battery run out on them when they really need that phone working. Again, it's all about the variety. The iPhone doesn't have a bad battery at all, but you can find many Android devices out there with a superior battery. The experts in the public agree on this one. It's looking like Android wins in most areas, but where Apple looks to be superior is offering updates. When it comes to adding new features, some bug fixes, and also security updates, Apple is ahead. Two other things talked about are how you can customize your phone and how easy it is to use. In terms of customizing, Android just has more options, as you'd expect when there are so many phones. But in terms of sheer simplicity, most people seem to think that Apple wins here. But what if you want to sell your phone and buy a new one? Which system holds its value better? There's only one answer to this, and no one disagrees. It's the iPhone. You can still get a fairly decent amount of money for a phone 2 years old.
I get the white horse.
There are people using iPhones even older than that, which still work very well. In the end, it seems like most people said that it's all about personal preference, and there's no definitive better OS. If you prioritize volume of choice and range of customization, then you have to go for Android. But if you value design and ease of use, then you can't go wrong with an iPhone.
Oh, it's another Arabian.
For Android or iOS, there's only one answer when it comes to building your website: Wix. Wix is in a class of its own when it comes to designing your personal website, where you can use any one of the hundreds of their fully customizable templates, all with an easy-to-use drag-and-drop interface, or take advantage of their incredible ADI feature, which can create a unique site all of your own just by answering a few simple questions. And there's no need to worry about what mobile OS your users are using, because with Wix, it's going to look great no matter the platform. Try out Wix today by visiting the link in the description or going to wix.com/go/infographics2019. Let us know which is your favorite OS in the comments, Android, iOS, or one of the other weird ones. And be sure to check out our other video, Apple versus Samsung, which is better. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.
Dang it, I'm such an idiot. Well, if I'm keeping this horse, I have 2 Arabians. One dies, I get the other. Give me a second. Mommy! I'm tired of her.
Around San Diego Comic-Con, there are a lot of Chris's. So we're going to test our knowledge on Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, Chris Pratt, and Chris Tyndall. Okay.
The year is 1942, and across Europe, various German concentration camps have been established. Most of these are slave labor facilities where Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, and the mentally retarded, and various other undesirables are forced to work on behalf of the right. A few, though, have a much darker, more sinister purpose. These don't have factories, mines, or quarries to be worked, and in fact only exist for one purpose: mass murder on an industrial scale. no different than cattle to the slaughter. Over 6 million people are herded into gas chambers and killed. The guards overseeing one of the worst crimes against humanity in history, simply going about their job like it was a regular 9 to 5. But why did tens of thousands of German guards just idly obey commands to help kill millions of people? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Infographics Show. Today we're taking a look at the infamous Stanley Milgram psychological study that proved people were perfectly willing to obey orders and shock others to death. When World War II ended, many former Nazis found themselves dragged up before international tribunals to answer for their heinous war crimes. Time and again, the men and women on trial offered a single excuse: I was just following orders. They didn't deny the knowledge of what their actions were helping facilitate, and they didn't sugarcoat what they did. They simply excused their part in one of the greatest genocides in history by simply saying, I was told to. The former Allies weren't buying any of this blind obedience, and many Nazis found themselves imprisoned or hung on the gallows for their crimes. But in 1961, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram grew curious about just how much a role obedience had in the execution of these heinous crimes. After all, no matter the racial prejudice, it was extremely
Do you see that? Red keeps popping up on its back.
would have personally murdered a concentration camp prisoner. If this were true, then our streets every day would be running in rivers of blood, and yet society continues to function relatively well. And rather than minorities being executed, they see their social and legal status continually improve in liberal democracies around the world. Why this paradox then? Why were these thousands of Nazis perfectly normal and law-abiding citizens before the war, but then turned into mass murderers during the war? Could simple obedience really be the difference between genocide and peaceful cohabitation? To help answer this question, Milgram developed an experiment at Yale University and put out an advertisement in the local newspaper asking for male participants. Each participant would be paired with another person, secretly an accomplice of Milgram's, that was pretending to be just another normal participant.
Wait, are they all Arabians?
Of teacher, and the accomplice was
Yeah.
the role of learner. Although to mask the deception, lots were drawn to determine roles. Naturally, the draw was always fixed to ensure the accomplice was the learner. In all, the experiment drew 40 males aged between 20 and 50, and whose jobs ranged from unskilled to professional. The wide variety of test subjects would prove vital in determining if there was a difference in age or profession as far as obedience to authority was concerned. As the experiment began, the learner would be taken into a separate room and have electrodes strapped to their body, with a thin wall separating the accomplice learner from the teacher who was seated directly on the other side of it. The learner was then given a list of word pairs to learn, and the teacher was asked to test the learner by naming a word and asking the learner to recall its partner from a list of 4 choices. The learner, as an accomplice, purposefully picked the wrong word most of the time, which prompted the experimenter to deliver an electric shock every time that the learner made a mistake. Each time the shock was delivered, though, the voltage was increased, so that the next shock would be more painful. The punishment shocks began at 15 volts, or a particularly strong static shock, to 450 volts, a voltage lethal enough to kill if its path were to cross the heart. As the experiment continued, the learner would keep giving wrong answers, and the teacher was prompted to deliver a fresh shock. On the other side of the wall from the learner, all the teacher heard was the shouts of pain from the learner, and as the shocks grew in intensity, the learner would begin to plead to please not be shocked again, or to be let go from the experiment. The worse the shocks got, the more pleading and begging, and the louder the screams of pain became. When the teacher started balking at delivering another shock, they would be given exactly 4 prods to continue the experiment. The first being, please continue. If the teacher still refused, they would be told, the experiment requires you to continue. If that was still not enough, then they would be told, it's absolutely essential that you continue. Finally, if that didn't work, then they would be told, you have no other choice but to continue. After the 4th prodding, if the teacher refused to keep going, then they would not be asked again and the experiment would end. Each response was carefully crafted to slowly increase the level of authority projected onto the participant, until at last making that authority absolute. It's important to note that the participants were not restrained or under any legal obligation to continue the experiment and could have quit at any time. The result of the experiments were shocking, pun fully intended. Of the 40 individuals who took part, a full 2/3 of them continued the experiment to the highest power level, 450 volts. This is despite the learner on the other side of the wall begging for the experiment to stop, crying and sobbing in absurd, refused to continue the experiment, though they all made it at least 3/4 of the way through, hitting at minimum 300 volts. Milgram's experiments discovered something.
Take the money and take the horses.
As he said himself, stark authority was pitted against the participants' strongest moral imperatives against hurting others, and with the participants' ears ringing with the screams of his victims, authority won more often than not. The extreme willingness of adults to go to almost any lengths on the command of an authority constitutes the chief finding of the study, and the fact most urgently demanding explanation. Milgram would go on to explain the behavior exhibited in this experiment, and at Nazi death camps across Europe, by suggesting that every day people have two distinct states of behavior when in social situations. The autonomous state is where people direct their own actions and take responsibility for those actions. The agentic state is when people allow others to direct their actions, and then pass off the consequences of those actions to the person giving the orders. They are happy to act as agents of the other's will, but don't believe that they themselves bear the responsibility for the consequences, known as the agent theory. Milgram suggested that in order for a person to
Wait, does anybody else see the there, man?
the person giving the orders must be perceived as being qualified to be a valid form of authority, and the person being ordered must be able to believe that the authority giving the orders will end up accepting responsibility for what happens. The second point was brought to light as the experiment progressed to higher and higher shocks. Here, some participants were told that they had responsibility for their own actions, meaning that any harm they were doing to the other individual and the consequences of that harm would be on their own heads. These individuals showed the highest rate of refusal to continue the experiment, with very few continuing to obey. Others were told that the responsibility for any harm being done to the individual would fall directly on the organizers of the experiment, and of these participants, they showed the highest willingness to continue to obey. Some who balked at continuing even changed their mind and went on, after being told they wouldn't be responsible for what happened. Milgram would go on to conduct the experiment again in 18 studies, with a variety of different factors in each. In one experiment, the experimenter or the individual ordering the electric shocks would wear a gray lab coat, a symbol of authority and a kind of uniform. Then the experimenter would be called out of the room because of a phone call right as the experiment began, and he would be replaced by another individual dressed as an ordinary member of the public. In this experiment, the obedience level dropped from over 65% to just 20%. In another variation, Milgram changed the location of the experiment to a set of rundown offices instead of the very impressive and prestigious Yale University. Here, despite the experiment remaining exactly the same as in Yale, obedience dropped to 47.5%. This suggested that the environment or the status of the location also affects obedience, lending credence to the theory that authority is perceived more than it is learned. In a third variation, the participants could tell an assistant, who was also in on the experiment, to do the shocking for them, rather than doing it themselves. Incredibly, this changed obedience rate to a whopping 92.5%, proving that as there's less personal responsibility, obedience to authority, even if immoral, increases exponentially. In a fourth variation, the participant had to physically force the learner's hands down onto the shock plate once the learner began to refuse to take part after reaching 150 volts. Not surprisingly, this plummeted obedience to just 30%, proving that when the participant was not buffered or protected from seeing the consequence of their actions, many would not choose to continue obeying. In a fifth variation, the participant was joined by two other teachers who were also in on the experiment. One of the fake teachers would refuse to participate at 150 volts, and the second would choose to stop at 210 volts. When the real participants saw others disobeying an authority figure, obedience dropped to just 10%. In a sixth variation, the experimenter was not physically in the room with the participant, and instead relayed his instructions via telephone. When the experimenter instructed the participant to deliver an electric shock, but the participant was not physically in the room with the authority figure, obedience rates fell to 20.5%. Interestingly, when not directly observed, many of the participants actually cheated and purposefully missed giving electric shocks or gave far less voltage than they had been ordered to. This proves that proximity to an authority figure affects obedience. While Milgram's study revealed a shocking disposition to obey authority, even when immoral, there was heavy criticism aimed at it by other psychologists. One set of criticism alleged that the participants may not have fully believed the experimental setup and did not believe the learner was actually receiving electric shocks. There were also problems with the sample group used, as all the participants were male, which begs the question if females would act differently. Future studies involving females would disprove the notion that there's any major difference in obedience to authority between men and women. However, another critical flaw in the study is that the entire sample population was self-selected, or in other words, they had volunteered themselves for the study. This may point to them having more of a volunteer personality, which might directly affect how they react to authority figures overseeing their behavior in a study that they themselves wanted to be a part of. The Milgram study has been plagued with controversy almost since its inception, yet seeing the pattern of genocide and mass atrocities committed by both soldiers and everyday men and women across history, there can't be any denying the underlying finding. We humans are disturbingly prone to obeying even a moral authority, as long as we can plausibly shift the blame from ourselves to an authority figure. It's okay if you round up all the Jews in your city and march them to a concentration camp, because in truth it's not really you doing it, but the system that you're just a small part of. Even the guilt of mass murder can be easily discarded, or rather shifted from the self to those giving orders. Perhaps then the legal defense offered by thousands of Nazis that they were just following orders should have been a valid one after all. And we can't help but wonder just how much of a push do we ourselves need to turn from law-abiding citizen to a facilitator of mass murder. Would you have obeyed orders to shock an innocent person? Why or why not? Also, make sure you check out our other video, Would You Survive the Stanford Prison Experiment? And as always, if you enjoy...
Get both an unlimited plan and the all-new Samsung Galaxy S10 included for just $35 a month.
This video was made possible by Wix. If you are ready to create a website, head over to wix.com/go/infographics to try out one of their premium plans right now. Sometimes, the best way to assess how people will behave and conform within a particular environment is to create that environment and study them like you would rats in a lab. That's exactly what happened at Stanford University in the early 1970s, when a research group wanted to investigate the psychological effects of power and authority between prisoners and prison wardens. Today, we'll take a closer look at how that went down in this episode of the infographic show, The Stanford Prison Experiment. The Stanford Prison Experiment was conducted at Stanford University between August 14th and 20th.
I don't want to see this stupid stuff.
By a research group led by psychology professor Philip Zimbardo, who ran his experiment with a group of unsuspecting college students. It was funded by the United States Office of Naval Research as an investigation into the causes of difficulties between guards and prisoners in the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps. The aim was to investigate how readily people would conform to the roles of guard and prisoner in a role-playing exercise that simulated prison life. In particular, Zimbardo wanted to find out whether the brutality reported among guards in American prisons was due to the sadistic personalities of the guards, or whether it had more to do with the prison environment. So how did he go about creating this laboratory prison? Zimbardo converted a basement of the Stanford University Psychology Building into a mock prison and then advertised for volunteers to participate in a study of the psychological effects of prison life. More than 70 applicants were interviewed and given personality tests until 24 ideal test subjects had been chosen. They were all male students who were paid $15 per day to take part in the experiment. The group was then randomly split into prisoners and guards. One dropped out, leaving 10 prisoners and 11 guards and 2 reserves. The guards worked 8-hour shifts in sets of 3, and the prisoners were housed 3 to a cell. There was solitary confinement for prisoners who broke the rules in an attempt to keep the mock prison as authentic as possible. To make it even more realistic, the college students were arrested at their own homes and taken to the local police station. They were fingerprinted, photographed, and booked before being blindfolded and driven to the psychology department of Stanford University and led to the basement prison. They were then stripped naked and had all their personal possessions removed, which were locked away. They were given prison clothes and bedding, and they were referred to by their number only. All this was done without warning, to shock the test subjects so their reactions were as if this were a real-life situation and they were real prisoners.
You can shoot me, but don't tackle me.
They carried a whistle around their neck and a small baton borrowed from the police. They also wore special sunglasses, so eye contact with prisoners was impossible. No physical violence was permitted, but the guards were told to do whatever was necessary to maintain law and order in the prison. Zimbardo observed the behavior of the prisoners and guards, as well as acted as a prison warden. So what were the results of this controversial psychology experiment? Within a few hours of the experiment beginning, some guards had already started to use their newfound authority to harass the prisoners. At 2:30 in the morning, the guards used their whistles to wake the prisoners up and do a count. This was to remind them of their number and also to demonstrate that the guards were in control. They provoked the prisoners by giving them pointless and boring tasks to accomplish, and if they disobeyed the rules at any time, they were told to do push-ups. One of the guards stepped on the prisoners' backs while they did push-ups, making it much harder. And being in the prison also quickly influenced the behavior of the prisoners. They gossiped to the guards about each other, and some even began siding with the guards against prisoners who did not obey the rules. But the first day passed without too much trouble breaking out, which may have lulled the guards into a false sense of security for what lay ahead, because during the second day of the experiment, things got a little out of control. The prisoners removed their caps, ripped off their numbers, and barricaded themselves inside the prison cells by putting their beds against the door. The guards forced the prisoners away from their cell doors by letting off a fire extinguisher. Then the guards broke into each cell, stripped the prisoners naked, and took the beds out. The ringleaders of the prisoner rebellion were placed into solitary confinement, and the few prisoners who did not take part were given special privileges, deliberately causing a rift in the prison population.
Know what?
Relationships between the guards and the prisoners started to
For
change.
trying to be smart.
Prisoners became more dependent, the guards became more divisive towards them in order to hold on to control. As the experiment progressed, some prisoners faced emotional and psychological effects from the experience. Only 36 hours in, and prisoner 8612 began suffering from acute emotional disturbance and disorganized thinking, which resulted in uncontrollable crying and rage. The guards told him he could not leave, and he soon began to act crazy and to scream, at which point the psychologists realized they had to let him out. The guards held a visiting hour for parents and friends, exactly as would happen in a real prison. Zimbardo also invited a Catholic priest who had been a prison chaplain to evaluate how realistic the prison setup was. The chaplain interviewed each prisoner, telling them the only way they would get out was with the help of a lawyer. Half of the prisoners introduced themselves by their number rather than name. When prisoner 819 spoke to the chaplain, he broke down and began to cry hysterically. The psychologist told him to go and rest in his room before taking him to the doctor. Zimbardo wanted the experiment to run for 2 weeks, but just 6 days in, he had to unlock the doors. Christina Maslach, a Stanford PhD who was brought in to conduct interviews, was shocked when she saw how the prisoners had been abused by the guards. "It's terrible what you are doing to these boys," she said. Years later, Zimbardo noted, "It wasn't until much later that I realized how far into my prison role I was. I was thinking like a prison superintendent rather than a research psychologist." The experiment demonstrated that people will readily conform to the social roles they are expected to play, especially if the roles are as strongly stereotyped as those of the prison guards. In the words of Maria Konnikova, a Russian-American writer with an AB in psychology who writes for The New Yorker, the lesson of Stanford isn't that any random human being is capable.
Big, but his intelligence is a matter of some conjecture. Some say he is as dumb as he looks, but
Yes, it's Dollar General.
it's not quite
Look, I'm
that
like the
dumb.
back road.
So these are the boys going to
Field out here. There ain't no Dollar General in this field. What is our motto at Dollar General? That's right. Where there's a field, Dollar General will be. So when I come back by here in 24 hours, there needs to be
I'm going to go and get something to drink.
in seamlessly, and they fled Auschwitz into the country. However, they were caught in a village to the south. Still, it proved that hiding in the woods worked. Wetzler and Verba bided their time, waiting to see if the men who were captured would reveal their exit strategy and set them back to square one. In time, it became obvious that they hadn't. The stack of wood remained untouched and unnoticed. So 2 weeks later, Wetzler and Verba made their own attempt. Once inside the stack of wood, Verba scratched up a message left by the men.
Oh, hi, whoever joined.
The note they had edited the wood on easier, you know what, would certainly get them executed. The scratching also helped serve as a minor distraction while waiting out the 3 days.
I want to have a little drink.
At which time they expected to be missed and to have the guards come looking for them. They waited in the darkness and concealed completely. Then 5:30 came. No siren went off signaling that anyone was missing.
Eli, did you pour you some soda kiss?
Then time ticked on further to
I'll
6.
pour it.
They wondered if their location had been given up, and those in charge knew exactly where they were hiding. Nervously, they waited longer as the silence continued. Then finally, much later than they had expected, the siren ripped through the night. They heard the sounds of men running and of dogs scampering on the wood piled on top of them. It was a while before it was silent again.
Dumbass probably died.
For a full
Because he drunk out of that fucking tar out there when I sprayed that Roundup in that tire.
Third day was done, and they heard the guards giving up on their
Uncle S.
Now was their chance, and they
Who?
I pull it clean out of his arse. The smug fucker.
Okay. So what's she got us doing at the Gray's place?
She wants us to torture tobacco fields. Said they ain't had rain in weeks round here.
What?
Yep, using that back there.
Moonshine?
Burns faster than kerosene, that stuff. Said it'd be fitting, she did. All I'm thinking is how about I try fitting my boot up your hook now, you snotty old bitch.
Hosea really picked the right fella for tea at the manor, didn't he?
Ah, he was giving it his usual flannin'. One of these families got gold stashed somewhere, he reckons. I mean, I'm all for sticking it to rich folks. I hate rich folks. There really better be some bloody money at the end of all this.
Hosea knows what he's doing.
Does he, though? The master finagler of nothing.
Easy, easy.
So far, we've destroyed the Braithwaite still, tried to sell the shine back to them. Now we're on this fool's errand, which I'm very much looking forward to, by the way. They was saying old man Gray's double security after that business at the saloon.
We just robbed their horses, too.
That was you? Jesus.
So, we're just gonna drive on in there, is that it?
Don't worry, I got a plan. Wagons go in and out of there all the time with supplies, equipment, payroll. Especially now they're taking on all that extra muscle. We're making a delivery, that's all. Just leave it to me. I can talk a dog off a meat wagon.
All right, then.
Back on the road. Yeah.
Whoa.
Drive on the road, for Christ's sakes. We're never gonna get there at this rate.
You'll be all right.
Where are we moving?
There we go. Yep. Here.
Shit, we're stuck. Come on, Morgan, pick up the pace here.
Easy there. Yep.
going to wreck the wagon. Whoa! Hold up a second. Are you not worried about them greys, English?
Excuse me?
You not worried about them greys?
In what sense?
Well, they knows you.
Maybe you're right. You know what? Here, I'll go hiding back. If you can act naturally and stop us from getting into a fight before we're ready.
I will try.
Yes. Try and do an impression of a human being.
I'm not going to go that far. We're here. Stay out of sight. I'll do the talking.
Hey, hold it right there.
Whoa.
What you want, boy?
There was a thing at the saloon.
What you talking about?
Well, I'm delivering the supplies.
You're not the usual driver.
You want a bottle, friend? Here. Have a wee drop. I'm new. I mean you no harm. I've come from Donegal, in Ireland.
You don't say.
Yeah. They said you'd understand. Some kind of incident at the saloon in town. I was told to bring this up here. Ask no questions, I'll tell you no lies, sort of business. Before the officials got there, they said.
Okay. Drive this way. I'll show you how to get there.
Oh, thank you, friend. Have a drink. Sean.
Hamish.
Good to meet you, Hamish. Fine bit of country you've got here. Not as fine as Connemara, but fine nonetheless.
My people come from Scotland.
Is that right? Then you and I are nearly brothers.
Just over here. Straight down the path here. It's getting so I can barely keep track of all these deliveries coming in.
Yeah, and they said they was looking for more drivers in town. I jumped at the chance. I ain't never been a feller to kick a bit of honest work out of bed. So, you folks been having a hard time of it, have you?
Yeah, Mr. Gray's got a heap of problems right now with another family around here. Bunch of covetous lowdowns trying to sabotage his livelihood. Disgusting.
Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that, Hamish. Sounds like you definitely deserve that drink.
You don't know the half of it. Just in there.
Right you are.
You can unload it here.
In here? Oh, the horse is like a swift one, do they?
Excuse me?
Nothing. It's grand. Quite a place you boys have got here. Reminds me of one of them big houses out in Donegal.
No trouble with other
Fancy places they was, Hamish. Real fancy. Because of some folks, money, they can build quite the fanciest places. Imagine.
How you getting on?
Good. Nearly got these things ready.
Okay. There's plenty of guards out there. Here's how I feel we should deal with things. You head over to the dry barn.
Sure. And you?
I'm gonna deal with the fields themselves. We coat everything in moonshine, and then we light.
Quiet. There's someone coming on the left.
Oh, hey. Well, I thought the wagon already arrived. This one didn't. Strange. So, what you got there?
Tools, payroll.
Okay. Drop it by the supply shed at the back of the fields.
Sure. See you later.
You hear that? Payroll.
Yeah. Let's get this job done first, okay?
Just let me deal with our friend here. Come on. You douse the fields. I'll meet you at the barn.
Try to stay out of trouble. Christ, I'm bored. Should be enough for here. That should do it. That's good for here. That's good. It's gonna be a...
I'm gonna douse this too. Ain't you go, Arthur? Light her up. Come on. You must have something with a flame, right? Woohoo! Would you look at that? Now let's go light ourselves a fat cigar.
You ain't leaving here!
We'll hold this lot off. You get those fields properly going.
Somebody shoot him already! It's gonna be a long night.
give this a quick dousing as well. Think she'll go, Arthur? Light her up. Would you look at that? Now let's go light ourselves a fat cigar.
You'll burn with it.
We'll hold this lot up. You get those this properly going. I'm gonna douse it too. Think she'll go, Arthur? Light her up. Woo-hoo! Would you look at that? Now let's go light ourselves a fat cigar.
Somebody shoot him already!
Good deal with these fellas. You keep warning.
You'll pay for this!
You got some horses from the stables. Come on.
Not right now. We got company. Look out!
This is... This is looking bad. Ah!
is a goddamn mess.
Let's steal some horses from the stables and get out of here.
Damn it! No, we got trouble. Take cover.
Look out! There's more of them! Wait, turn it this time! Now where's the lead?
those horses.
Well, let's see if the payroll is actually in there.
Hurry up.
Oh boy, we did good, Morgan. We did good.
Great, but let's go. You done good, girl. Okay, let's get the hell out of here, fast.
You're right, follow me.
More men up ahead. Here it comes.
Watch your back.
Here goes straight out the front gate.
Jesus, that turned into a right party.
You call that a party?
That Braithwaite had got our money's worth, all right.
Let's just get out of here first. Yeah. Go, go.
I think we lost them.
That we did.
Quite a night.
I just noticed my mic was muted.
I hope him and Hosea are riding that there's some money at the end of it.
Well, what now?
Head on back to camp.
We're coming.
Sure.
Let's go. You guys gotta take a break.
Home sweet home.
Like the waves of the Bay of the Biscay. The gas.